Writing is tough to get into. There are so many ways to make mistakes, to render your piece of content completely spineless without ever meaning to. Some things will simply take time and practice, like finding your voice, whereas others can be worked out a lot quicker, with some help. Let's talk about 5 common writing mistakes that beginners make. Too much flowery language. This one is super common. To be honest, it doesn't completely go away. I still struggle with it. Now, to clarify off the bat, some flowery language is okay, especially depending on the niche, genre, and format you're writing in. For example, my novella is a romance thriller set in a fictional Victorian England. The characters won't be talking the way you and I do. It was a different time. A certain amount of flowery language is needed to convey a more fitting dialogue style of the characters, as well as convey emotions since it is part romance. The trick is in finding a balance, not in eliminating it. When you're doing your edits and you come across a flowery word, phrase, or sentence, ask yourself, does this serve a purpose? Is it there to convey strong emotions? Is it there because of the way the character speaks? If you cannot identify its purpose, replace it with something simpler. Repeating basic words over and over. This is another one that plagues every writer in their early days, and even somewhat into their later years. Some repetition is absolutely expected and necessary, especially if your work is on the longer side, such as a book. But that doesn't mean we should keep shoveling out the same words every single sentence. Said, for example, is a great basic word. It gets the job done. But if every time a character spoke we just applied a blanket he said or she said, that would get old pretty fast. There are ways that people say things. Sometimes they ask things. Sometimes they mutter. Sometimes they laugh through words. Sometimes they growl their words in anger. Don't be afraid to change it up occasionally. And remember, the thesaurus is your best friend. Editing too soon. This one is near and dear to my heart because it's just so relatable. It is difficult to shut down the part of your brain that wants to edit every repetitive word, every punctuation error, every choppy sentence. It's a nagging voice that goes on and on about each little mistake you've made. But the fact remains that you should not be editing your first draft. The first draft is for getting your thoughts out on paper. It is acceptable for it to be messy, have errors, and not flow well. You can go in and start correcting and refining things once the first draft is done, but leave it alone beforehand. Put the urge aside and just focus on writing. Otherwise, the story will never get written. Tricks for overcoming writer's block are also really helpful for avoiding the urge to edit too soon, so I'll link my video to that in the description. Info dumping. Even the greats do this one. Have you ever read The Fellowship of the Ring? Tolkien was a brilliant writer, a master at world building and languages, but even he fell victim to the allure of info dumping. It took over 10 pages to get to the end of Bilbo's birthday party where he disappears by putting on the ring. Info dumping could even be seen as a rite of passage for fantasy and sci-fi writers, as it is incredibly common to find it in those genres. But we must remember that just because it was done by someone with a lot of talent doesn't mean it can't be improved upon. Information should be shared organically to develop characters, build the world, and move the plot forward. Dialogue can be a great tool for sharing important information. Imagine a character who is bitter and rebellious, but we don't know why yet. She's sitting with her friends and spots a mother and child playing in the snow. She suddenly gets irritable and storms off. Her friend follows her, catches up to her, and stops her, insisting on an explanation. She admits that the reason it upset her is because her mother abandoned her when she was little. Now you have a big piece of character development divulged in a meaningful way, telling instead of showing. The phrase show don't tell is basically synonymous with writing. This is something many of us heard when we were young and just starting to put our imaginations on paper. Despite the casual nature in which the phrase is used, it's quite important. One of the quickest ways to lose your audience is to tell them what is happening rather than show them. This is why I like to use movies, TV shows, and video games for inspiration. They have to show you. They are a visual medium. When I write a scene, I imagine it in my mind as I'm writing, playing out like a movie, capturing the small actions like twisting a piece of hair, shuffling a foot, furrowing a brow. If a character is upset, there's no need to tell the reader that because you can show them through a facial expression. If a character is frightened, you can show them through a bead of sweat or shaky hands. If you're really getting stuck, try to act the scene out. What expression do you make? What do your hands do? Are you moving or staying really still? Have fun with it. If you're going to write a story that not only draws your audience in, but also keeps them around, you're going to need more than good descriptors, organic information transfer, and showing emotions. You're going to need solid characters. So check out this video on creating relatable characters to learn more.